about their dreams, struggles, and contributions.
Our story of the African American community begins with recollections of the days of slavery and how those painful memories impacted future generations.
My grandmother would tell us about slavery, how hard it was, and when they brought them over here on the ship, one man jumped off and was swimming in the water, and they shot and killed him. And it was so, it was those things. When I was growing up a little girl, it worried me.
I feel a very personal connection with the whole aspect of slavery because I am the descendant of slaves. On my father's side, my great-grandfather, I knew of him, Thomas Russell, had been a slave. He lived 3 years after he was free, and I've always wondered what he did with those 3 years of his life that he knew freedom.
There were also positive stories, stories of friendship and unity.
Well, a lot of free runaway slaves hooked up with the Seminole Indians, and they retreated down to this area. And they learned how to live in this area in thatched roofs made out of palm fronds. They did some initial farming, did some initial ranching, had a lot of black cowboys.
In many cases, Indians were enabled African Americans to escape slavery, and they intermarried with African Americans. As I said, on both sides. On my mother's side are Creek Indians, on my father's side are Cherokee. And I know that in Florida, the history of Florida, that Creeks and blacks marrying helped to produce the Seminole tribes.
Family stories about slavery reflected individual experiences, but as time passed, many families moved on and looked forward.
To be fair, there wasn't too much I heard about it, because when I came along, they were trying to get away from it. Sometimes they would talk, but the children could not listen. What they had to say, they would send us in one room, and they would talk about it. And I think it was because they didn't want us to know.
Slavery was not a conversation that really was addressed very much in my family, but my grandfather, maternal grandfather, told me that his mother was a slave, and she died sometimes in the early 1930s. But I never met her. I never got a chance to talk with her. So I don't really know firsthand. I've never met anybody firsthand that was a slave.
One of the reasons I think that slavery really wasn't a discussion for households of African Americans, especially during the early part of the century, because so many bad experiences were connected with slavery, especially for people in the South, in the Deep South. And it was just a topic that was better left not discussed.
After the Civil War was over and slaves were freed, African Americans in Southwest Florida established communities.
Of the 15 men who came to Ponta Gorda initially, 7 of them were African American. They, of course, helped to do everything from digging up palm scrubs to just laying out the town and helping to develop that town. The history of the African American community in Fort Myers, Lee County, began with the settlement of Nelson Tillis and his family around 1869. And later, other African Americans came to the area. As work became available to them, they settled on Sanibel Island, River Grand Island, out east near Alva, and other areas in Lee County, down south near Fort Myers Beach. The African Americans who came to work remained to live here. There are African Americans who cleared the way for the Tamiami Trail. There were African Americans who worked
on the docks on Boca Grande and Sanibel Island. There were African American farmers on Sanibel. They picked the fruit in Alva.
As African American communities grew, churches were built. These buildings became more than just places of worship.
When we talk about the whole African American religion or church movement, it's very important to remember that the slaves brought religion with them. The Christian church that developed here in America is really a syncretism of African religion, some Islamic religion, and then of course the Christianity that was here. Now, the